He's down! Please, send help! The bison hit him! We're on the Yellowstone Trail, near the meadow. He's not moving.
In the Willamette. In the heart of America's first national park, beauty and danger walk side by side. One wrong step.
Welcome to True Animal Terrors, where real danger meets real stories. Don't look away.
Late September in Yellowstone carried a restless beauty. Meadows rolled in gold and green, dotted with sagebrush, while distant peaks glowed under the fading warmth of the sun. Steam hissed from geysers in the distance, rising in white plumes that twisted in the wind, mingling with the sharp scent of pine. The air was crisp, almost sharp enough to sting the lungs, and every sound carried clearly: footsteps on gravel, the faint bugle of elk echoing through the forest, the chatter of visitors excited to catch glimpses of the park's legendary wildlife. Cars crept slowly along the roads, pulling into scenic turnouts where tourists leaned over railings and lifted cameras toward the vast landscape. On one such evening, a small group of workers at a ranger outpost finished their tasks. Richard Park, a 23-year-old electrician from Billings, Montana, packed away tools with two colleagues. He was known among them as cheerful, restless, always looking for something worth sharing later. That afternoon, a ripple of chatter swept through the area, tourists speaking of a massive bull bison grazing in a nearby meadow. For many visitors, a sighting like that was the pinnacle of a Yellowstone trip. For Richard, it was an irresistible detour before heading home. The men followed a dirt trail branching from the outpost, narrow and uneven, flanked by grass that reached their knees. A breeze pushed through the aspens, their leaves trembling like coins, scattering dappled light across the path. Warning signs stood along the trail in bold red letters: "Stay at least 25 yards away from bison. They are dangerous animals." The markers were common throughout the park, reminders repeated so often that visitors often glanced past them without thought. Ahead, the meadow opened wide, glowing under late afternoon sun. In the center of that open stretch stood the bull. The animal's coat was a mass of dark, shaggy hair, shoulders humped high with muscle, head lowered as it tore at the grass with sweeping movements. Every so often it lifted its head, chewing slowly, nostrils flaring as it tested the air. A pair of ravens circled above, their calls sharp against the quiet. Richard stopped, phone already raised. The screen framed the bull perfectly broad, powerful, an image that looked like something pulled from another century. His co-workers hung back at the line of posted warnings. "That's close enough," one said firmly, but Richard stepped forward into the meadow, boots pressing into damp earth. The distance narrowed. The bull shifted its weight, heavy hooves pressing into the ground. Dust lifted with each slow step. Its eyes, black and glassy, turned toward the movement. Steam puffed from its nostrils in the cool air. The meadow, moments ago alive with birds and distant insect hum, seemed to draw silent. Richard continued, crouching slightly to steady his phone. The bull gave its first warning. A deep, guttural snort rolled out, low and vibrating like air forced through stone. It swung its head, horns catching the light, then stamped once into the soil. The ground trembled faintly with the impact. The co-workers called from the trail again, voices urgent now. "Back up. Don't push it." The next second shattered the stillness. The bull lunged forward, muscle and mass exploding into motion. The earth shook under its charge, hooves striking like hammers. The distance collapsed in seconds, 25 feet gone in a blink. Richard froze, then turned, boots tearing at the meadow grass as he tried to run. He made it no more than 3 strides before the bison struck. Its massive head slammed into his side with a crack that echoed across the clearing. The force lifted him off the ground, body twisting violently before slamming back down in a spray of dust. The bull hooked its horns beneath him, driving upward. Richard's body lifted again, weightless for an instant, then dropped heavily, landing in the churned soil. The bison pressed forward without pause, hooves striking his chest and abdomen. Each impact landed with the sound of breaking wood, brutal and final. From the trail, his colleagues shouted his name, powerless. One scrambled for a phone, calling for help, his words broken by the urgency of panic. Others, nearby tourists with cameras, screamed and pulled children back, some running for their cars, others frozen in shock. A few lifted phones reflexively, capturing fragments of the chaos before dropping them in horror. The bull continued its assault. It trampled with weight nearly a ton, hooves driving into bone and muscle, horns thrusting with terrifying precision. The meadow rang with the rhythm of impact, hooves against earth, body against ground, the hollow sound of air forced from lungs. Dust rose around them in a pale cloud. After what felt endless but lasted only moments, the bison stopped. It stood over Richard's motionless body, sides heaving, dark eyes scanning the meadow. For a long breath, it remained there, steam curling from its nostrils into the cooling air. Then, with a final flick of its tail, it turned and walked back toward the aspens. Grass bent under its hooves, and the clearing fell into a heavy silence broken only by distant shouts and the metallic ring of a phone connection. Rangers arrived minutes later, their vehicle jolting to a stop at the trailhead. They pushed through the crowd, weapons slung but unused, hands already signaling for space. The bull was gone, its massive form swallowed by the trees. Richard lay where he had fallen, dust and blood marking the ground. Paramedics knelt beside him, checking for breath, for pulse. Their faces told the truth before their words did. The meadow, serene only minutes earlier, had become a scene of chaos, visitors crying, rangers ushering people back, radios crackling with reports. The towering peaks beyond stood unchanged, indifferent, while steam still rose from geysers and the wind carried the same clean scent of pine. But for those who had witnessed the charge, Yellowstone's beauty would forever carry the echo of pounding hooves and the sight of a man crushed beneath the weight of a beast built by the wild. The rangers stood in a tight circle around the body, their radios alive with clipped voices. Subject unresponsive. Massive trauma. Request coroner and additional units. The words cut through the murmurs of the crowd. A park medic shook his head slowly, then placed a blanket over Richard's body. Dust clung to the fabric, settling into the folds as if sealing the moment. Visitors clustered on the boardwalk and along the trail, many still in shock. Some wept openly, others whispered about what they had seen. A ranger raised his voice, firm but calm. Please return to your vehicles. The area is closed. Do not approach. Parents guided children away, shielding their eyes, while a few lingered, staring back at the meadow as though trying to understand how something so calm only minutes before had turned lethal. News of the incident spread quickly through radio channels. By the time the bull was located again, grazing quietly at the edge of the forest, a decision had been made. It would not be removed. The animal had not broken barriers, had not strayed into campsites. It had reacted as bison do during rutting season, swiftly, decisively, without hesitation. Rangers marked its identification tag, B211, a bull already known for prior aggressive encounters with careless visitors. It would be noted, monitored, and left where it belonged. The coroner's report later described the injuries in stark detail: fractured ribs, collapsed lungs, puncture wounds from horns, severe internal trauma from trampling. The conclusion was blunt. Death was almost instantaneous once the bull's hooves struck the chest. Wildlife experts confirmed what the witnesses already knew. No human body can withstand the impact of a 2,000-pound animal moving at full speed. At a press briefing the following day, park officials emphasized the safety rules once more. Bison are not tame. They can run up to 35 miles per hour. The minimum safe distance is 25 yards. These rules are not suggestions. They are life-saving measures. Behind the official, large photographs of bison loomed, their bulk unmistakable, their power undeniable. The message was clear: Yellowstone is a place of wonder, but it demands respect. Richard's hometown of Billings, Montana received the news with disbelief. Friends described him as adventurous, a man who could turn ordinary moments into stories worth retelling. His parents spoke briefly, their voices heavy with shock. He loved the outdoors, his father said. He wasn't afraid to take risks. Co-workers at the outpost, still shaken from what they had witnessed, struggled with silence. "We told him to stop," one said quietly. "We begged him to stay back, but he wanted the shot." Local media replayed those warnings in looped coverage, pairing interviews with footage of Yellowstone landscapes. Anchors spoke of the contradiction, how a national park known for family vacations and breathtaking scenery could also hold moments of sudden, brutal danger. Commentators asked whether the park needed more barriers, more rangers stationed near popular meadows, stricter enforcement of distances. Others pushed back, arguing that Yellowstone's wilderness could not be tamed without losing what made it unique. Among wildlife experts, the incident sparked fresh discussion. Biologists pointed to decades of records. Bison had injured more visitors in Yellowstone than any other animal, including bears and wolves. The reason was simple. Tourists underestimated them. Herbivores looked slow, almost docile, especially when grazing. But during rutting season, bulls became territorial and volatile, their hormones fueling aggression. The problem is perception, one expert said. People see a big cow. What they don't see is a ton of muscle capable of charging like a truck. Investigators pieced together the timeline from witness accounts and phone recordings. The signs had been clear, posted warnings, ranger instructions earlier that morning, even the bull's snort and stomp before charging. Each step closer had been a choice, each ignored caution adding to the inevitability of what followed. The official conclusion was unavoidable. Visitor error. In Billings, Richard's funeral drew hundreds. Photographs of him smiling, holding fishing rods, standing on mountaintops and grinning beside friends were displayed at the front of the hall. Stories were shared. His love of adventure, his eagerness to take risks, his habit of turning every moment into something to post. Some mourners wept quietly, others shook their heads at the senselessness. His parents sat together holding hands, the grief etched into their faces. Back in Yellowstone, the meadow where the attack had happened reopened days later. Grass bent back upright, dust settled, and the bull continued grazing as though nothing had changed. Yet visitors who walked the trail paused longer at the warning signs, reading the words with fresh seriousness. Rangers repeated their safety talks more firmly, their voices carrying extra weight. 25 yards, they said again and again. Not 10, not 15, 25. For those who had seen it firsthand, the memory did not fade. The sound of the charge, the hooves striking like thunder, the heavy snort before the impact stayed with them. Some swore they would never set foot so close to wildlife again. Others carried guilt, replaying the moment they shouted warnings, wishing they had done more. The tragedy left Yellowstone unchanged in its beauty, yet sharper in its warnings. The geysers still erupted, the elk still bugled, and the ravens still circled over meadows where bison grazed. But the story of one young man who stepped too close lived on as part of the park's unspoken rules. Nature gives no second chances when boundaries are ignored. The lesson that lingered after the dust of that Yellowstone meadow settled was painfully clear, written not just on the warning signs scattered along the park's trails, but in the silence that followed the attack. Those bold red letters, "Stay 25 yards away from bison," were not guidelines, not polite suggestions, but the distilled wisdom of decades of tragedy. They existed because lives had already been lost. To ignore them was to gamble against the very laws of nature. Distance, it turned out, was not an inconvenience, nor a challenge to see how close one could get for a better photograph. Distance was the only barrier between awe and catastrophe, between marveling at a wild animal and becoming its next target. In Yellowstone, the line is razor thin. On one side lies wonder, steaming geysers erupting against the horizon, elk bugling across open valleys, and herds of bison moving with a quiet majesty that speaks to a time before cities and highways. On the other side lies danger, as sudden as a snort and a thunderous charge, as final as hooves crushing earth and bone. Respect for those boundaries is the only way to walk safely between the two worlds, between the beauty that draws millions and the wild power that demands humility. If you are interested, we hope you can put some comments of yours down below. Please let us know what we can improve to bring you a more enjoyable time on our channel. Your support means the world to us.